Well, the dumbasses in the mainstream media are all worked up again over something related to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard again. And the injustice that they say was, again, done to Amber Heard in the media. You know, these are the people, some of these people who are complaining. Again, it's the same old cast of characters. Kat Tenbarge, you know, New York's The Cut magazine, which, by the way, was responsible for some of the worst reporting on the Marilyn Manson situation that I've seen. Some of the articles and the interviews that they did with the accusers were just, just ridiculous. I talked about that on my channel. You can look it up. But anyway, so what is the latest thing? The latest thing is that Rihanna has apparently, her company has invited Johnny Depp to be featured in their upcoming runway show, the Fenty runway show, which I'm assuming is going to be similar to the televised Victoria's Secret shows that used to take place in the past. And so, yeah, it doesn't sound like he's going to have a huge role, but there is going to be a featured role of some kind, and it sounds like he's going to be in the audience dressed up and will look cool and, you know, make a cool appearance, all right? So, of course, the usual cast of characters in the media are hyperventilating, and these are the same people who would have us believe that they watched that entire trial, the defamation trial, Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. They watched the entire thing, the same trial that we watched, and they would have us believe that they came to the conclusion that Amber Heard was innocent and that Johnny Depp was the abuser, and that they would have us believe that that is what the evidence actually pointed to. And so, you know, right there, you know, they have no credibility if they watch the trial and that's the conclusion that they came to. I'm not convinced as to how much of the trial some of these people actually watched. Do you all remember during the trial, maybe toward the close of the trial, or maybe a bit after, someone in the media, the mainstream media, was reporting about how much misinformation there was on YouTube and on LawTube about the Depp versus Heard trial. And then they reported, one of the things that this journalist reported on was Jason Momoa's testimony in court. So they played a fake clip of Jason Momoa testifying in court. It was totally fake. It was something that someone had put up on the internet. And remember this journalist who was complaining about disinformation by LawTube and by YouTubers, and how only the mainstream media were the appropriate gatekeepers of information because the rest of these rubes on YouTube they just intellectually they couldn't hack it, or they were too biased, or they just didn't know what was going on. They were misinformed. And then this journalist puts in their journalism a clip that's total staged BS, and all of us knew that because we've actually been following this thing. I'm just so tired of being lectured to by these journalists and some of these mainstream media figures and some of these celebrities who don't know the actual full facts of the case. Or if they do, look, if any of these people who are on Amber Heard's side and who are complaining about Depp and the nice treatment that Depp is getting since the trial, if any of these people actually listened to the same recordings that we've all listened to, the recordings of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard fighting, where she says, I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say this, but she says, you always run away, you always run away. And he says, we have to separate, there can be no violence, leave me alone, you've got to stop attacking me, et cetera, right? I'm paraphrasing, but all of that. If any of these people in the mainstream media who are complaining about the treatment Heard is getting, if they listen to those recordings and they still came to the conclusion that Amber Heard was the victim in this and that Johnny Depp was the malevolent party, then they just have no brains. Then they're just cognitively deficient. And that's not an insult to cognitively deficient people, because there are lots of, quote, neurotypicals who seem to have figured out the truth in this way ahead of the stupid imbeciles of the mainstream media. All right. So, you know, imbecile number one being Kat Tenbarge. But there are a lot of people lined up behind her, you know. And I know that Camilla is probably just waiting for her moment, you know, to come back on the scene. She's just waiting for things to die down and people to forget about the fact that she's a propagandist for Amber Heard's PR company. But anyway. Yeah, so let's look at this article in The Cut where they're freaking out. So yeah, it says why on earth is Johnny Depp in the Fenty show? All right. So she starts off, let's see, this article is written by Claire Lampin, and I'm not going to read the beginning because she begins basically by reiterating that she doesn't know why Johnny Depp won his defamation case, and that it seems to her that basically that Amber Heard didn't do anything wrong. So then she talks about how he's going to be in the Fenty show. TMZ's reporting it. And Rihanna and her team invited Johnny to be a part of it, and both sides were super excited to make it happen. And then Claire says, I'm sure he is, but Rihanna? Really? It says, the cut has reached out to Fenty reps for comment and will update if we hear back. As Depp's nightmare trial made inescapably clear, though, many, many people, famous and not, never bought Heard's account of the relationship. Yeah, exactly, because it was obviously BS, and the woman couldn't even cry one tear. She was on the stand for hours with all these facial contortions, and she couldn't cry one tear. It was so obvious to everyone. Never bought Heard's account of the relationship, though she brought a lot of evidence to the table. Well, not really. You know, you can bring a lot of shit to the table, but it's still shit. You know, like if I get a bunch of excrement and I put it in a bag, that's kind of a gross thing to think about. But it is apropos, right? Since we're talking about Amber Heard, and excrement seems to be an interesting aspect of her story. If I put a bunch of excrement in a bag and I bring it in here and I tell you, oh no, this is actually cash. There's a lot of money in this, and I give it to you. It doesn't really matter how much excrement there is in the bag. It's not going to turn into money, right? And so what we have with Amber Heard is her evidence, her big bag of evidence that she brought to the table. Well, when the jury looked at it, when we all looked at it, it turns out it was just a bunch of excrement. Okay, so this person is acting like, oh my God, she brought all this evidence. It has to be legitimate evidence. It can't be like faked photos and things that aren't really photos of much of anything, or your sister who you've paid off over the years saying that things didn't happen a certain way when it defies logic. Says the court reviewed cruel, violent text messages from Depp to his friends in which he ranted about burning and raping Heard's corpse. Okay, we've already established that was a reference to Monty Python, which was something that Depp, shared a love for with Paul Bettany, the guy whom he was texting. This has all been explained, but of course, this person is just showing their ignorance here. Jurors saw photos of her bruises and heard from a witness who remembered having to cover them up. I'm not going to relitigate all of this, but no. Other witnesses testified, it's more complicated. Other witnesses testified to Depp's allegedly explosive temper and corroborated the idea. When she's talking about other witnesses testifying to his explosive temper, we're not talking about shrewish, ghoulish-looking Ellen Barkin, are we? And no, the ghoulish look doesn't have anything to do with whether she was telling the truth or not. It's just that what she said was like nothing. He has a world of violence surrounding him. All right, so she talks about the trial a bit, and then she says, I wonder how so many people came to see Depp as the good guy. Oh, all right. Oh, blah, 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 blah. And then she says, my central question remains, whether or not you believe Heard's version of events, surely there are other artists out there who aren't texting their friends grisly jokes about drowning and immolating their exes. Well, how do you know that, first of all? You're saying that all the other artists and celebrities out there don't say hideous things about their exes? This woman, I just don't like the idea either. I think it's ridiculous that Johnny Depp is not allowed in private text to his friends to say really whatever he wants to say about someone. We can talk about free speech, and we can talk about there perhaps being consequences for more forms of extreme speech or whatever in terms of, social criticism or ostracism or whatever. But I believe that private speech is totally, totally in every way sacrosanct, and nothing that someone should be held responsible for in any way publicly. And, we've already talked about the fact that these jokes were Monty Python references, right? But she says, what other artists are texting their friends grisly jokes about their exes? Well, probably a lot of them. I would imagine that most celebrities in Hollywood who have had done to them what Amber Heard did to Johnny Depp. Okay, so let me just review what she did, all right? She pretended to love him. She pretended to care about all the things that he cared about and watched all of his movies and be interested in all the things he was interested in, right? And then she landed him, and then she proceeded to lie to him habitually, pathologically, to manipulate him. She cheated on him with multiple people. She was violent. She cut off his finger. She hit him repeatedly. She constantly berated him, etc., etc., etc. So you're saying that she can do all of those things, and that Johnny Depp is not allowed to privately text a joke about killing her, a murderous joke that was actually a reference to Monty Python. And you're saying how many other artists would do that? Well, probably, I would imagine 90% of other artists in that situation. And I can't imagine that if someone had done to me what Amber Heard has done to Johnny Depp, and not just stopping there, also she took him through the mud. She dragged him through the mud. You know, she told everybody that he was a wife beater. She put on the fake bruise and she walked around and, and did her beauty pageant walk for TMZ, or her walk of shame for TMZ, I should say. And all of that. And then she said all of this shit about him in the press. And yes, everyone knew who she was talking about in that op-ed. It was very, very clear. She didn't just say one or two things, all right? She talked about, imagine that a powerful man is like a big ship and there are all these people invested in keeping the ship afloat. Everyone knew that she was talking about Johnny Depp, okay? Give me a break. So after she does all of that, yeah, I would have probably some really bad things to say in a text as well, especially if I were joking around with a friend whom I trusted, a friend, by the way, whose own teenage son was brought to tears by Amber Heard. Do you remember this story? I was really surprised that this story did not get more media coverage. Paul Bettany and Jennifer Connelly, remember Jennifer Connelly, right? She was in A Beautiful Mind. I think she won an Academy Award for that. She was other things, Requiem for a Dream, okay? And Paul Bettany, also a huge star, okay? The two of them, Bettany was good friends with Depp, so they took their family down to his private island in the Caribbean. Amber Heard was there. Apparently, they brought their teenage son with them. I think he was 18. And Johnny Depp said in his testimony that he was extremely bright, very, very bright, and into ideas and new things and whatever. And so he was telling all of them about something that he had read about, that he had studied in school, that he was excited about. And Amber Heard proceeded, probably drunkenly, to berate him mercilessly until he cried and basically ran away. And that's no slight against their son, okay, for being weak. We know what a ruthless person Amber Heard is, and we've heard the way that she berates Johnny Depp, calling him this fat old man and all of this stuff. Just listen to the tapes. So she made this boy, the young son of the friends of her husband and the host. She made him cry and run away. That's what we're dealing with here. And so, yeah, so Johnny Depp was talking to this kid's dad, and after all that Amber Heard had put him through, he was complaining to him about all of this stuff, right? And yeah, he had some choice words that were references to a joke. Here's the thing I have to say about Rihanna, about this Rihanna situation, okay? I think that it is actually insulting and sexist for people to assume that they can tell Rihanna what she should feel about the Johnny Depp situation, or that they can suggest that Rihanna doesn't know what domestic violence is, okay? Need I get into her history with Chris Brown, and you can see the pictures online of what Chris Brown did to her face and everything? So I think that it's highly insulting and even sexist for people in the mainstream media to suggest that Rihanna doesn't know what domestic violence is. And I think actually that some of these people, maybe they owe Rihanna and Johnny Depp an apology. All right, happy Friday, everybody. Check out my channel, like and subscribe. Always, tips are appreciated. Links are below. I'm going to have a lot of stuff coming out this week on different topics. Bye-bye.